Hey everyone, and welcome to this live today. I wanted to come in and talk about 3 ways to stay out of fear. There goes Rex. So, as you know, we cannot deny there is so much craziness going on out there in the world, and in a world where there is so much fear, it's really important to be able to know how to. How to be able to stay calm at this time, because it's so easy to get caught up in so much of the anxiety and fear, and that's just thriving at the moment. Hey Heather, how are you, honey? So I wanted to come in and do this Facebook Live to be able to just give you some really cool tips on how to be able to navigate this time. It's I think it's a really important time where people need to be able to remember, if you consider yourself to be a spiritual being or have spiritual beliefs or anything like that, it's really important to understand that this is the time where you're required to shine that beacon of light, to become that, what do you call it? Hey Marissa, how are you, honey? To become that beacon of light for other people. Because there is so much fear-based thoughts going on out there and so much anxiety, people are actually looking for some peace, some solace, some balance. And if you consider yourself to be a spiritual being, this is your time to show up and shine. Because I do find that sometimes that in this moment, while there is a huge amount, hey Dorinda, a huge amount of fear-based stuff, sometimes this can be the time where spiritual people can shrink away and hide behind the element of, oh, I need to protect myself, or I need to do this and I need to do this for me, and forget about that commonality of showing up and shining and sharing your ideas and helping support other people that are going through that fear, that are looking for that peace and solace. You can provide that for them. Thank you, gorgeous, for all the beautiful hearts. Now, this is the time where we get to be able to be that beacon of light, to be able to show up, to provide that place where people can gather their thoughts, where they can become centered, become focused, because half of the time we already know what we need to be able to do to be able to move through a state of fear, but we just forget it because the fear starts running faster and the voices become louder. And especially while there is so much on a collective consciousness out there, it's just coming at everyone thick and fast. So this is something I really think is an important time, for spiritual people to come forward and become that beacon of light. I have seen, some spiritual people that have been putting up about conspiracy theories and shit like that. And I think that's doing nothing other than amplifying the fear and feeding more shit in to, keep people in that fear-based stuff. Hey Caesar, hey Vanessa, how are you? And this is not the time to invoke even more fear-based thoughts. This is the time to bring forward that peacefulness and to be able to become a person or a place of tranquility for people, and to be able to hold space for people at this time and point. So this is my biggest driving factor. Hey Jean-Marie, hey Faith, around why I wanted to do this and how you can become that beacon of light, okay? So the first one thing is to remember your spiritual practices and your tools. What is your go-to thing that you can do to keep you centered, keep you calm, keep you focused, and keep you ignited within your values around being a spiritual being? Like, what are the things that you do? It could look like meditation, it could be visualization, it could be just listening to really like meditation music, because music is a channel on which to be able to connect in with ourselves. It could be oracle cards, it could be eating well, it could be making sure that you're doing forms of gentle exercise, to be mindful of your thoughts, to be consciously aware, be present. Part of your spiritual practice could be to be aware of all of that negativity and keep yourself outside of that. I am at peace, however, my kids seem to feel they can continue. Hang on, I need to. They continue living as nothing That's right. I really appreciate you sharing that, Heather. Heather has written, I am at peace, however, my kids seem to feel they can continue living life as if nothing changed. This is causing me to panic. I can only tell them what I know and what I feel, however, they are in control of our lives. I love that message. And you know what? It's okay if people choose to continue living their lives as if it's not affecting them, so long as they have conscious awareness. And this is what you can bring. Instead of having that panic, Heather, this is where you can just bring in that conscious awareness of some of the things that they could do. Just, you know, the things that I would share with my kids if I was in that situation would be, you know, being conscious of you know, washing your hands, being around people that are coughing, make sure that you wash your hands, you have like the antibacterial stuff, just those kind of conscious awareness types of things. And therefore you know that you have given as much information as you can, but what they do with it becomes their choice. And just always check in on them. How are you going? Are you okay? And therefore you get to play that beautiful role as being that parent and that guide, but also being that beacon of light for them. Because got to keep calm. I've got to keep the supply to do art therapy, definitely. And I think this is my kids are excited as they want to start early holidays. Yeah, there will always be that element. But remembering that each person is going to choose however they want to experience this time. Let me just give you a classic example. For me, I don't ever really get caught up in any of these hypes, yet my husband, on the other hand, is very much media involved. He watches the news and is really tuned into that side of things, and so therefore I've got to be able to respect that that's the way that he wants to experience this, because he wants to, for his point of view, he wants to stay as informed as possible. And for me, I think sometimes in these types of situations, you've got to be mindful as to the type of information that you're receiving, and to have that conscious awareness to be able to see the faults and flaws, and to be able to see the triggers that are activating people to stay in more fear-based thoughts. But we have a different viewpoint around this now. Neither is right and neither is wrong. They're just different ways in which people choose to experience this. So I think it's always really important to be mindful of that. It seems as if they're not listening. I will keep continuing to plant seeds. That's all you can do, sweetie. Like, I know that by just what you've written, that's putting you in a state of panic and fear. But I think this is a moment, honey, where if I was in this situation, I can only share with you what I would do. I would then take a step back and going, am I allowing myself to stay more engaged in the fear and not trusting the process? And this is where your spiritual practices come in. How can you stay committed to your strengths, to your practice, to stay committed to this, which then leads me on to the second steps, which is your beliefs. It's really important at these times to become aware of your beliefs. My belief, and as I said, all I can do through this Facebook Live is share how it is what I do, and hope that that might be able to help support each and every one of you. For me, my belief has always been, as a spiritual person, that everything happens for a reason. So I look for that reason, and when we look for that belief, we also find the different polarity. So my belief, everything happens for a reason. The polarity of that is that you can also see that I'm trying to be really mindful here, because I don't really want this to be governed around governments and stuff like that, but I see that media plays a very big contributing factor to how it influences people and keeps them in a fear-based space. So with me having my belief that everything happens for a reason, my belief is that if it is supposed to be part of your experience to be able to have the coronavirus, then nothing you do is ever good. Like, then it will unfold that way, and there will still be a beautiful lesson for you inside of that. So that's my belief, is in that I believe everything happens for a reason, and I look for those reasons not on a personal level, but on a collective consciousness. And on that collective consciousness, I can see that we are doing everything the opposite to a degree. Like, just using as an example, when we in Australia here, we just had the fires, and the flooding, now everyone came together as a community. The moment there was this announcement of the coronavirus, people have gone back to singular thinking. It's all about me, and we're seeing the fights and the arguments and the stabbings and all this terrible display of fear being shown towards other people rather than coming together as a community. And that is, for me, that is how we get through things, is becoming that community of people. And this is where I'm saying, as a spiritual being, you can have that community, provide a community for the people that, look up to you or understand that you have a different belief and are looking for someone that stays committed to those beliefs and is open and is consciously aware and is watching things that are going on. So it's important to be aware of what are your beliefs in these situations. Do you believe that the fear that you're feeding into yourself is either helping you or taking you more away from your value, from your belief? And this is where it's really important to be able to have that. There you go. So just as an example, Heather Marie, this is where maybe this Facebook Live will come in really handy for you, is being able to see that incongruency between your beliefs and how your actions are showing out. You've just written that your belief that everything happens for a reason and that you're staying committed to your beliefs and that you are safe. So if that's your belief, you're not, I feel like that's not what you're showing towards your children. And so therefore that's why there's panic, because you feel like they're not understanding you. Whereas if you stay solid in your belief that everything happens for a reason, that you are safe, now you can also introduce that belief of not only are you safe, but your children and your family is safe, and extend that belief to, encapsulate your children. Therefore, your belief is almost keeping them in that gorgeous bubble. So therefore, it will reduce that panic. So the reason I like to be able to share these 3 tips to be able to help move through fear is we can also get to see where our gaps are, so we can also know where to strengthen them. And so that's really awesome. And like you, no compassion for other people that's, for me, I feel like that's the lesson that we've gone from being a global consciousness of working together and being in harmony. Whenever I see, whenever I see that there is massive things that happen in this world, like Mother Earth type disasters happen, that brings us together as a community, but we're not coming together as a community now. And this is where the gap is, because everyone's becoming singular. And therefore, that's why I'm suggesting that if you're consider yourself to be a spiritual being or a light worker, you can bring in and fill in that gap and become that light source for people to be able to help navigate through this time. So the third area to be able to be conscious of around all of these fears that are happening is your values. For me, one of my strongest values is sanity and fun. At this point, there is very few people that have sanity, and shit is not really fun. That is one of my strongest values, and so therefore I do limit my amount of time that I spend on social media. I do limit my time that I if I had my way, I'd watch no freaking news, where my husband, on the other hand, he'd watch every freaking channel on news. But my value is to be informed, and knowledge is important. So I'm not removing myself from all of that, but I'm implementing what my values is, and that health is a value for me, along with sanity and fun. So I do things to be able to support myself, because people that will tend to be more prone to this type of virus are people that are elder, but also have if their immune system is compromised, or they have a weakened immune system. So this is a really important time to consider, well, if you really want to protect and look after yourself the most, then this might be the time that you may need to introduce taking some additional vitamins or minerals, making sure you're eating well, taking care of yourself, taking the rest when you need it. And therefore you have this beautiful complement between making sure that your values, your beliefs, and your spiritual practices are all working cohesively, so that you can navigate away from the fear, become conscious of any fears do come up and be able to go in and check in with yourself to see if there's a incongruency between a value or a belief and this fear, and be able to see where the gap is and see how you can strengthen that. But also be able to, if you do hear people that are struggling at this time, to be that support beacon, to be able to help other people to be able to navigate through this time when there is so much fear. And this is how we can make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, staying committed to our values and beliefs, but being able to support other people out there that may not have that spiritual practice, that may not, they may not be aware of their incongruencies between their values and their beliefs. They may feel that they are completely surrounded by nothing but negativity and other people that are caught up in all of this and that fear-based thinking approach. And you could very well be the person that helps them to be able to see the light that's out there, to be able to restore balance for them, to be able to may even just be that safe space where someone maybe even you might just be the person where someone feels that they just need to be able to voice their fears, and so you might be the person that can just hold that sacred space. Although I do suggest be mindful of the amount of people that you do that, because it can make you feel more dialed into being that beaker of just holding that space. But it's important to be able to hold the space for the people that you feel have just sort of lost their way a little bit, and by having a conversation with you and being able to share some of the things that you're doing for your own self, your values, your beliefs, your spiritual practice may help support them to be able to move through at this time. And this is where spiritual beings and light workers in this time and frame, this is where you're being called to do your work, not hide away and shrink away from that. This is that moment where you can come forward and be that beacon of light to be able to support as many people as we can, and be able to bring back in that community for people, community of support for people, and in a beautiful way that is about validating and honouring each person is experiencing this at a completely different way. And there is no right way and there is no wrong way, but it's an important element where it's time to, we hear the expression all the time, it's time to show up and shine, but this really is the time where on a collective consciousness, the world really needs more light, because fear is darkness. In the darkness is where more fears breed. But when you have a light, it becomes that tunnel that becomes a magnet that draws people back up to the surface and away from their fears. And this is where we as a collective consciousness can help contribute to this global awareness of what's happening right here at this time and point. So again, just to recap over how to be able to, the 3 best ways to be able to move out of that fear is 1, really engage in your spiritual practice, whether you need to set an alarm on your phone to remind you because you get busy, really reinforce what your spiritual practices are, along with just remembering that you may just have your go-to. You may be that person that just goes and meditates all the time, but all of a sudden, due to what's going on, you may find that meditation is not giving you the solace or that peacefulness that you're looking for right at this point. So be open to that there is always then more than one way, and that you have an array of different ways to be able to do your spiritual practice. So if one way doesn't work, try another way. Don't worry about it. There is balance being restored is all that's it's about, and removing those fear, disengaging from that fear. So how you go about getting there is of no relevance so long as it's something that you're committed to and something that you believe. That's so awesome, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, Heather. So Heather's written that she went and got her first set of 3 crystals and a book, along with another deck of oracle cards and tarot cards. And this is where it totally ties back in with this week's energy forecast about trusting the guidance that's coming through. Your soul is going to be able to provide you and let you know what is the best way to be able to support yourself, and how you can best be there as a guide, a light, to be able to help others. It's just a matter of whether you tap into that and trust that at this point. So I absolutely love that you're doing that. That is so awesome. And this is the most important time to be able to dive into that. The next is be able to check in. What are your beliefs around fears? Do you believe, what are your beliefs around I don't want to use the coronavirus, but I just mean, what are your beliefs in general? As I said, mine is that everything happens for a reason. So because of that, that strengthens my conviction to my spiritual practices to make sure that my belief is to stay committed to my own soulful journey. So how do I do that? I do that through my spiritual practices, and that's what keeps me centered, that's what keeps me calm, and that's what keeps my energy channeled towards the direction of my beliefs. Everything I'm doing is supporting that belief. The next third place was your values. What do you place high? What are your not negotiable values? So as I mentioned, for me, my value is you've got to have sanity. Shit's got to be fun, and health is important. Health is one thing you can't go to the shop and buy. So those three things are important on my value list. So sanity, I keep myself away from as much, not so much lock myself away from but I'm very, I'm mindful of the types of information I'm seeing on social media. I'm not on as much because I'm channeling towards getting my tasks done this week, and staying committed to that belief of, being there for support and guidance for people. But also that value of sanity of every time you're watching the news, that's dialing you into the fear. In some cases, what it does is it actually triggers me because it pisses me off so much to see that the media is playing a very big role in that. And so therefore I choose to disconnect from being pissed off. So that's my values to keep myself sane. Fun. I still tried, my sister and I, we send stupid little... the moment we see a stupid thing about the coronavirus, we will send each other these stupid little emojis or little posts that we've seen them send them. And we laugh about that. And health, I make sure I eat well, I take care of myself, I go for a walk, I disconnect from technology, I eat well. And at this point, because I am someone that does get low iron, when there's a lot of stuff going on, my iron levels get very low. So I make sure I take my iron along with my vitamin C and vitamin B. And they're my ways that I make sure that I'm staying true to my spiritual practice and my spiritual beliefs and my human beliefs, along with making sure that all my values, beliefs and spiritual practices are all working towards that overall outcome of staying true to you. That's so awesome, and that's so lovely to hear. Krista's written, I don't watch the news, but it's whether you watch it or not, it's still unavoidable in this situation, because it's still things that people talk about at this point. So even if you don't want to be around it, it's still there. People are still talking about, don't even get me started on the panic buying. And that's what I was saying earlier. You may not have caught it before, Nora, where I was saying that the panic buying is taking us outside of community and bringing us back to oneness, self-centeredness, just self-absorbed, rather than having a conscious awareness that there's going to be plenty of food. You will be able to wipe your ass with toilet paper or some description. We do not need to hurt and harm each other at this time and point to protect your own self, because that's not going to protect you. It's in your mindset. It's where your energy is going. These are all the types of things that bring you into, when your body is in a state of fear, your nervous system actually vibrates at a completely different frequency. And everything that, when you act from anatomy and physiology side of point, when your nervous system is switched on, you're activated into fear, you actually become more of an attraction magnet of the very thing that you don't want. So it means that you end up spending more time around people that are all focused on this. You become self-absorbed and attract more people that are self-absorbed. You start noticing that you start becoming a little bit crazy, because therefore you don't want to be around people because everyone's going to make you sick. And so therefore you're only perpetuating and feeding the fears with more and more and more of what you do not want. And this is where our spiritual practice, our beliefs and our values, they come through so strong and apparent right at this point. And it allows you to be able to make that conscious choice. Each and every individual that walks this earth is their own conscious creator of their own destiny. For me, these are the three main key areas that if you focus on these, therefore you're channeling your energy towards more of what you want, and become that beacon of light to be able to help others realize that they do have a conscious choice on having this, but also having that conscious awareness that each person will experience this how they want to, but this is how you choose to be able to experience this time and place, and to be able to support other people that do want what it is that you're doing. And this is how we can come together on a global and connective consciousness to be able to support each person and become that beacon of light, and be able to shift conversations away from fears, to be able to bring back in that joy and peacefulness and harmony back into this world. Some won't be able to so definitely, Nora, and this is, I think it's also important to be mindful of what gets triggered within our own self and see where it is that we can introduce. Because Laura's written, I am so sad, I am not frightened, I'm upset about the greed. And this is where the more that we focus on that greed, the more it stands out, the more it feeds that anger, the more it keeps you in a state of being frustrated. And that doesn't help you, and it certainly doesn't help anyone, and it only attracts more. So this is where we can come forward and remind our own self. Definitely, love, and I appreciate that you've written that you are triggered. And as I said, I get triggered by watching the news to a degree, because I think it's that's just what's occurring for me, that I do get triggered by seeing the way that news can perpetuate that cycle and keep feeding the fear, and yet they're saying they want to keep people informed, yet all they do is just keep plugging into more and more people's fear. And now that everyone's turned crazy, they want to stand back and go, oh, please don't be like that, and not take any accountability for that. So it's important to become aware that if something is triggering you, what is it about that situation that is the trigger, and how can you shift your thoughts, feelings and emotions so you're not channeling and leaking energy towards something that's not conducive or constructive and takes you outside of that space of balance and harmony within your own self. I am so pleased to hear that, Heather Marie, that you are putting things in place that we spoke about on our soul chat months ago. Definitely, and this is such a beautiful conversation that you just said about staying true to you. So thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. And this is that moment where we're spending so much time in areas that are either triggering us, upsetting us, or fueling more fear. That's the time that you could be spending doing your spiritual practice, to keep your energy vibing high, to stay committed to your truth, to stay committed to your purpose, your passion, your beliefs, your values. So it really is that time around being that conscious creator of your own destiny as to where do you want to spend your time, where do you want to distribute your energy, and what role are you going to play? Are you going to play into the role of feeding the fear, or are you going to play into that role of hiding and keeping all of yourself away from all the craziness out there? Or are you going to play a role and helping be that gorgeous shining light out there to be able to support people at this time and point that want that support? Now, not everyone's going to want that, and that's where you've got to be gracious enough to know where to be able to help people and to whom, because not everyone is going to be open to that. So in that situation, there's no point investing your time and energy, because it's just going into a sinkhole that's of no point of no return, and there's no helping certain people that don't want that help, and that is perfectly fine if that's what they want to experience. But there is a lot of people out there that are looking for a support. They're looking for people to be able to help them, to be able to bring back balance and calm, and each and every one of you can do that. So never forget how powerful you are, and how the world is calling on more spiritual and light workers to come forward and be that light. You have an awesome house. Heather's written she has no TV. That's not a bad thing. But as I said, we can't avoid what's happening, and it's not wise to avoid what's happening. We need to be able to be conscious of what's going on, so long as we're not getting caught up in the fear of what's going on out there. So I hope that this all gives you three really very, very powerful ways to work with the fear that's going on there. Ways to be able to introduce bringing back in and following your intuition, being able to become aware of what may be triggering you, where there may be some gaps in your mindset, your language, or your actions. So you could be, what I mean by that is, you could be saying to yourself, I'm just going to use the one that you said before, Heather. I am safe and I am protected, and yet your actions are actually saying the opposite of actually projecting that you're actually in a state of panic or fear or stressed out. So this is where, when we take that moment to just sort of self-reflect and be able to go back, and that's part of our spiritual practices for self-reflection, to be able to take a step back and go, are my values, beliefs, and spiritual practice all aligned? And that, when they're all aligned, you'll be in a gorgeous state of being in your own natural flow state. So this is where we can stay committed to our own self. I'm so pleased that this has been able to share some beautiful guidance for you, Heather, and for each person that's out there. I thank you so much for jumping on. If you feel, thank you for the beautiful hearts and the thumbs up, everyone, and for everyone jumping on today. Please feel free to share this so that we can get this message out and help each and every other, as many beautiful souls as we can. And if there is a way in which I can help support you, please feel free to ask any questions. And if any of you would like to be able to work more with that intuitive part within your own self and know how to be able to work through these fears, feel free. There's a link to be able to jump in and have a free soul chat with me. I'll get that out and be able to help you break through these fears. So much love. Take care, and always remember, you are a beacon of light. The world requires you right now. Don't hide away in the shadows. It's now time to break through some of your fears where you may have been scared around shining your light. But know that this is the most important time where it's required, and if it always comes from that beautiful intentional place of wanting to be able to help and support people, then you're never ever going to do it wrong. Remember that you are a lot more resourceful than what you think you are. And always remember to stay tuned into your own. Thank you so much, Nora. Always remember to tune in as part of your spiritual practice, to be able to tune into your own intuitive guidance that will be there to support you every single step of through what's going on at this point. So take those little bits of time to be able to tune into how your soul is best supporting you at this time. So as always, much love, take care, and be good and be kind to each other.